What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and this one is some of my final thoughts ahead of the Game Week 8 deadline. So I'm going to go through the latest press conference information. We got a ton of stuff from Chelsea, also some thoughts on Alderete and whether you should bench boost. I'll go through some of your questions and take a quick look at my own team as well. So let's get into it. So let's start with Chelsea, because there was quite a bit of relevant information from Enzo Maresca. So he confirmed that Cole Palmer is out for another 6 weeks. So that's going to take him past the next international break. So you're looking at game weeks 13, 14 until he's back. If you manage to get to this point, you've held on to him for this long for whatever reason, it's time to get rid. And you don't need to consider him when it comes to your future transfer plans and stuff like that. It also makes Enzo Fernandez quite a nice option, because it looks like he's probably next in line for penalties and he's playing number 10. But Enzo Fernandez is a doubt this week. So Caicedo, Enzo and Pedro Neto are doubts for game week 8. Enzo Maresca said they didn't take part in the session yesterday, so that's on Thursday, but we will see if they can train today. Otherwise, they would be out for tomorrow. Now, for what it's worth, I think both Enzo Fernandez and Caicedo will probably start, but we know that Enzo was sent back from Argentina for international duty with an issue. And now he's come back, and apparently he hasn't taken part in the session, and they're waiting to see if he trains today. Now, there were reports going around that Fernandez was never going to play that second friendly anyway. But the fact that he got sent back with an apparent injury and now he's a doubt for game week 8, that is obviously a little bit of a worry. I would say if you don't own Enzo Fernandez as it stands, I probably wouldn't bring him in. We may well get training photos later today after this video comes out, or embargoed press conference quotes tonight saying that actually he's fine. But we'll have to wait for that. As it stands, I wouldn't bring him in. If we see him in training photos, it's probably okay to do so. If you own him, I would just hold on to him. And I'd probably start him as well. There's every chance that he will start. I think that's what will happen. And the fixtures coming up after Forest away are still good. Sunderland at home, Spurs away, Wolves at home, Burnley away. So there's no need to rush him out. You know Cole Palmer's going to be out for a while. That makes Enzo Fernandez better. So if you've got him, keep him. As it stands, I wouldn't buy him unless we get some positive updates later on Friday afternoon/evening. Just to confirm, João Pedro is not a doubt, and he has been seen training. When the quotes first came out, I think he basically said Pedro, and people thought that was João Pedro, but lots of journalists confirmed it's Pedro Neto that's a doubt, not João Pedro. So don't panic on that. If you want to buy João Pedro, it's probably fine, and if you've got him, I would definitely keep him. The fixtures coming up are good. It's not worth a transfer to sell him. One thing I love about FPL is every single season, without fail, there's always a bunch of stuff that happens that you'd never be able to predict in pre-season. Like, who would have thought that I'd have a lot of questions going into game week 8 about bench boost concerns because of a Sunderland defender? But that's where we're at, and I completely get it as well. So lots of people asking about Alderete, who's currently yellow flag. Should you bench boost? This is what the manager said on Thursday. So the Sunderland press conference was on Thursday. After 20 hours on a flight, we'll see. I will check him this afternoon, but we had a quick chat with him yesterday, and he was positive. I will say, players are always positive. There are plenty of times in the past a player seems to have picked up an injury in a match, they're positive out of the game, and then they miss out. So it's good that he's been positive, but players are very rarely going to say, no, I can't play, or stuff like that. But then he said, we have to wait. So Alderete is a doubt. Personally, I think he will start, but I can't guarantee it. Should you bench boost? One question to think about is, how many other doubts do you have? Like, if you've got Alderete plus another, like Lyle Foster, for example, who we'll talk about in a minute, that's 2 doubts. Is it worth going for? Potentially not. It depends how confident you are in the minutes. I think both of those players will start, but I can't guarantee it. Are you willing to risk it? How quickly could you bench boost in another week? So if you delay it this week and you go and look at game week 9, 10, 11, 12, etc., how quickly will your bench look good again? If the answer is not for a while, that might be more reason to risk it this week. And then also, could you mentally wait until game week 17 to use the bench boost? Because I know it's a chip that frustrates people. They just want to get it out of the way. The reason that I mentioned game week 17 is it's after you get your 5 transfers for African Cup of Nations. So as a reminder, when we get to game week 16, everyone is going to be topped up to 5 free transfers. So we're all going to use our transfers by game week 15. Then in 16, we'll get another 5. And in game week 17, there's quite a few fixtures that are decent for cheap players. So like if you're on Senesi, for example, and you picked him up at 4.5, 4.6, he's got Burnley at home. I mean, you'd probably get to game week 17 and just want to play him. but potentially he could be on your bench depending on whichever defenders you had. Let's say you've got double Arsenal, you definitely play them against Everton. Maybe you've got Vardio against West Ham. Potentially in that scenario, Senesi is on your bench. But even like Brighton against Sunderland, so maybe you pick up a Brighton defender over the next few weeks. They got quite a few good home fixtures. Leeds, if you're running like Stack, Goodmanson, Rodon, whoever it might be, they've got Palace at home, which is not an amazing fixture, I get it, but it might be okay for bench boost. And then Fulham, so the likes of Joachim Andersen against Forest at home. And you've got those 5 free transfers, so it might be worth bringing in a Wolves defender, possibly, for Brentford at home. So that's a week that I've seen other people talk about. James on Planet FPL mentioned it the other day. And also it's good because there's no midweek and stuff like that. So it should be that most players that you'd expect to play will actually play. So you've got the good enablers, or potentially some good enablers, and 5 free transfers to fix it. Are you willing to wait? If not, either risk it this week, or if you've got a good week coming up, you could maybe delay it. But only if that week is excellent, I would say. Because if you've got 1 or 2 Sunderland players, I guess most people have only got 1. Like Everton at home in 10 is pretty good. But how many of your other bench players that week are also good? This is why I can't give a standard answer, yes, I would bench boost, or no, I wouldn't. Because I don't know what all your teams are going to look like in future weeks. I will also say, as much as Sunderland's fixtures coming up aren't great, if Alderete was your worst player on the bench in game week 12 against Fulham away or game week 13 against Bournemouth at home, I'd also bench boost that as well. So if the rest of the bench looks good in 12 and Alderete is your worst player for Fulham away, it's not that bad, right? Defensive contributions are a thing. So he's a doubt. I think he will start. In cases where you've only got 1 doubt in your squad, I'd probably risk the bench boost. If you've got 2, you're going to have to weigh up yourself whether you're willing to risk it. Would I? I don't know. I honestly do not know what the correct answer is here. I feel like I'd want to get it out of the way, so I probably would risk it. Unless you've got like a major doubt where you know there's almost no chance they're going to start. I just think with the likes of Alderete, Foster, etc., you're probably going to be okay. But that's about as positive I can be, probably. So if you've been thinking about signing up to Fantasy Football Hub and you haven't quite done it yet, this is the time to do it, because after the Game Week 8 deadline, 2 of their offers are finishing. One is the 50% off offer, and the other one is the win your mini league or get your money back offer. So at that point, you won't be able to make use of either of those. So if you want to sign up, there's a link in the description below, or you can scan the QR code on screen. There are a ton of tools that will help you at FPL this season, one of which is the My Team tool. You've also got the AI suggested transfers. You've got other tools that you would have seen me use in videos as well. So in the toolbox, you've got Optastats, there's player points predictions, fixture analyzers, all that good stuff. Ton of things that can help you, even if you started well in FPL or if you haven't, for the rest of this season. And like I said, there is 50% off right now, but that is ending after the Game Week 8 deadline. And if you sign up and don't win your mini league, you will get your money back. Terms and conditions do apply for that. Links you need are in the description below, or you can sign up using the QR code on screen. Just make sure you do it before the Game Week 8 deadline, which is 11 a.m. UK time on Saturday morning, so tomorrow. Or maybe Saturday if you're watching this on Saturday. So just on some of the other team news we got today. For Liverpool, Konate will train today, so presumably he'll be in the 11 for Man United at home in Game Week 8. Alisson is still out. I didn't see anywhere reporting the time frame for when he might be back. We know from what Slot said before the international break that he was quite likely to miss Game Week 8. I'm just not sure how many games afterwards until he'll be back. So for now, I'd probably ignore Mamadashvili unless you're wildcarding soon. On Isak, he said, I think he's now close to the level he should be in regards to his fitness. So I don't know if he's at 100% match fitness yet, but Slot said we can now judge him fairly. As in, he should be playing well. He's got enough fitness to do that. So if you want to go for him, it's not the worst time to do it. He's going to be first choice in that 11. The fixtures are quite good. His ownership is pretty low. He is 10.6 million, but some of you will be on a setup where you've only got Haaland and no Salah, so there's a bit of money to go around. If you've already got triple Arsenal and you can't get to Saka and you've got money to spend, I don't hate the Isak move. I will say it's not a guarantee that he just starts the next 5-6 games or 5-6 game weeks because Ekitike is there. Isak could still get subbed early, but I think for the next few weeks at least, Ekitike will probably be more likely to start in the midweek games, which gives Isak the Premier League games, but that's not going to last forever. At some point, I suspect Isak will get benched. It's just a case of how often that happens. So I wouldn't go out of my way to buy him, but if you've got money lying around and you want to swap a forward, I don't hate it. Arsenal, Odegaard back in a few weeks. We don't know exactly when. The reports that came out before we heard from Arteta basically said that he's going to be out until after the next international break. So Eze's minutes are probably going to be quite good. Havertz, he said he wants to break every timeline, I am sure, but we have to protect him. So we still don't know exactly when he's going to be back. For now, Gyökeres looks pretty good for minutes. Whether it's going to be pretty good for points, we'll have to wait and see. But he's going to continue starting, I would suspect. Ben White expected to be available. There was rumours going around that he wasn't training. That looked much better for Timber. But Ben White is apparently fine. They were just managing his workload. So at some point, maybe Timber gets benched for Ben White, but it's not going to happen that regularly. And then in Nketiah, I think I'm just about saying that right. I actually had another recording just a minute ago where I completely butchered it. But in Nketiah, I think is roughly how you say it. He's back in training. So potentially at some point we could see Gabriel bench for him. But I'm not convinced it's going to happen that often in the Premier League. But let's wait and see. Brighton, Matoma is trained, but is still a doubt for game week 8. So if you've got him, I wouldn't be relying on a start there. And obviously don't buy him. And then for Leeds, Perry is back. So Darlow's not going to keep starting for much longer. But Perry won't start in game week 8. It will be Darlow again. So if you're looking for the Leeds goalkeeper long term, I would just go Dubravka instead, like if you're wildcarding this week or something like that, because Perry will probably be starting game week 9 or 10 onwards. So I mentioned Lyle Foster earlier. I do think he'll probably start in game week 8, but there is some doubts there. Scott Parker confirmed he's got a dead leg and said we're hopeful he'll be fine for the weekend. And then I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but essentially the press conference was on Thursday, and then further assessment's going to be needed on Friday. So presumably if he comes through training okay, he'll probably start, but there are some doubts there. So if you're sat there with a bench boost of Lyle Foster and Alderete, and you don't want to risk it, then it's more than okay to delay it, as I've already mentioned. For Man City, Rodri is unavailable for game week 8. No one owns him in FPL anyway. Presumably that's quite good for Reinder's minutes, although maybe he'll have to sit a little bit deeper, do a bit more defensive work. But either way, I still think Reinder's is pretty decent value. He's still going to get forward. He's going to create some chance. He's going to get a bit of goal threat as well. I think he's fine. I don't think he's part of necessarily the best 5 midfielders right now. So if you wanted to sell him, you could. But Everton at home, not a bad fixture. Marmoush and Aït-Nouri trained yesterday, so that's on Thursday, and are close to being back. So Aït-Nouri obviously will compete for that left-back spot. That might push Vardiol to playing left centre-back way more often. Maybe Vardiol gets benched at some point, but I wouldn't really worry about him too much if you own him. I would just keep hold of him. And Marmoush, it'd be interesting to see how many minutes he gets, but ultimately, no one's going to go there anytime soon. You'd have to see a consistent set of starts, and even then, you'll have slight question marks about him. For Wolves, Vitor Pereira said that Strand Larsen is trying his best. It's not easy to be at his best level with pain. That's relating to his Achilles problem that he's basically had all season, by the sounds of it. He's trying to help the team. Now, to be fair, when you look at Strand Larsen's minutes recently, he has started the last 2 games and played 76 and 83. So it's not having a huge impact on him. But maybe he's getting slightly fewer minutes because of the injury and maybe not playing at his best. So I would say if you've got him, keep hold of him because it's Sunderland away, Burnley at home. But I wouldn't buy him right now, I don't think. I'd either go right down to like Thiago or Calvert-Lewin or someone like that, or I would just go up to the one of many 7 to 7.5 million forwards like Voltemada, João Pedro Bowen, etc. So I probably wouldn't buy Strand Larsen. For Fulham, Muniz is still out for game week 8 at least. Doesn't sound like he's necessarily going to be back for game week 9 either. He's running on the grass, but he's definitely out this week. And Raul Jimenez is still a doubt as well. So double Arsenal defence, not looking too bad considering Fulham might be without a number 9. So let's go through some benching headaches for game week 8. There were quite a few players that people were unsure about this week. So the list is quite long, but I'll try and go through it as quickly as possible. João Pedro I've put right at the top. If I had him, I would definitely play him. It's quite funny because so many owners of João Pedro seem frustrated they're looking to sell. He may even drop in price tonight, but I think he's a nice option. Forest away, not a bad fixture. Would be better if it was at home, but it's not terrible. And if Enzo Fernandez really is a doubt, and by the way, just to reiterate again, I think Enzo Fernandez will start, but he is a doubt. João Pedro is probably next in line for penalties with no Cole Palmer. So I quite like him this week. Then I've gone for Gyökeres. I haven't lost complete faith in him. Yes, he's not got the points recently, but he is getting chances. Fulham away is not an easy fixture, but I still rate him in that number 9 role for Arsenal. Then Sarr against Bournemouth at home. Great goal threat. I'm not expecting Senesi to get a clean sheet this week. And if you've got Gakpo, I wouldn't necessarily be buying him right now, but if you've got him, I think he will start. And Man United at home is not a bad fixture. Liverpool will be one of the top teams this week for projected goals. It's at Anfield. Man United defence is not necessarily super strong or anything like that. So I quite like Gakpo if you've got him, but I wouldn't necessarily buy him. And there's a question about him later on. Enzo Fernandez, I've actually put next, quite high up the list, because I think he'll start. If you think there's more doubts there, then obviously just bench him. But if he does play, he looks like a really nice option. So there's only so many players that I would want to play ahead of him. If I've got him, he's probably in the 11 for the most part. But I do think João Pedro, Gyökeres, Sarr and Gakpo, because you know they're probably likely to play, they should be ahead. Then Voltemada against Brighton away. This is where I got a little bit stuck with attackers. I put Voltemada quite high up, but it is an away game, and he's not on penalties ahead of Gordon. So he's fine, but I wouldn't have him any higher. Then Reinders against Everton at home. Then Bruno Fernandes against Liverpool away. I did contemplate putting Munoz and Porro ahead of Fernandes, but I just couldn't do it for a penalty taker. Now, I have put Ndiaye below Munoz and Porro, and I'm a little bit tempted to move him up the list as well because of penalties. But I think with Fernandes, his underlying numbers are generally better than Ndiaye. I mean, Fernandes might not have penalties anymore, but I think he will. So I've put him there, but I think for any of you that are thinking about benching him this week, it's probably fine. Liverpool away is not an easy fixture. So then Munoz best defender, then Porro against Villa at home, then Ndiaye, then Stack, Burnley away, ahead of Rodgers against Spurs away. There's no way I would do that if Rodgers was performing like he did last year, but he's not looked great unless he's worn an England shirt this season. Stack has maybe lost set pieces to Longstaff, which is a bit of a worry, but Burnley away, pretty good fixture. So that's why I've got Stack just ahead of Rodgers. Then the other defenders, Gay against Bournemouth at home, then Esteve, then Van de Ven. So I've got Porro ahead of Esteve because of attacking threat. Van de Ven could score you a goal, of course, but I think Esteve, because of the fixture, I would put slightly ahead of him. Then Senesi Palace away, I'm not expecting a clean sheet. Then Burn against Brighton away, not expecting a clean sheet. Then Tarkowski against Man City away, not expecting a clean sheet. A few people are going to look at Tarkowski and tell me that he starts on 4 points. I completely get that. But Senesi also is pretty good for defensive contributions, and it's an easier fixture. Like, Tarkowski may well start on 4 points this week, but he could get a yellow card. They could concede 2+ goals to Man City. I just don't think he's a great option. He's not bad next week onwards. I wouldn't go out of my way to sell him, but he's got to be quite low down the benching order this week. So let's get into some of your questions. Is Gabriel really worth the extra 0.4 million over Timber? For me, I still think if you've got the money, I would buy Gabriel. I'm just a little bit more confident in his minutes. I just think that it's more likely Ben White comes in for a Premier League game for Timber than Nketiah does for Gabriel. That's it. And it doesn't mean that I think Timber's going to miss 1 in every 2 games or 1 in every 3. He'll play a lot more than that, as we've seen. I just think over a long period of time, and bear in mind when you buy an Arsenal defender, you're holding them for quite a while, Gabriel's minutes will be slightly better. That's all there is to it. If you think I'm wrong and you're much more confident in Timber's minutes, just go for him because he's pretty attacking and he is less money. I just think if you took the next 10, 12 game weeks, which is easily a time frame you could be holding these players for, Gabriel probably misses 1 game maximum. And even then, I'm not sure he would miss any. Whereas with Timber, it could be 2 games. That's the margins I'm talking about. It could be 2, maybe 3, although I wouldn't bet on him missing that many. Is him missing 1 game worth spending an extra 0.4 million? I think it probably is, personally, because Gabriel's got decent goal threat as well. And also, he's not doing bad for defensive contributions. He's at 9 per start average. Timber's almost never going to get you them. And Gabriel does have that attacking threat as well. So overall, as a package, I do think Gabriel is better. But Timber is a viable alternative. I wouldn't force it. Like, if you could get Timber in 1 move, or Gabriel would take 2, and the second move you're making is not really much of an upgrade, just buy Timber. I just think for the certainty, I would go Gabriel instead. But could there be a time when Timber starts right back and Nketiah starts left centre-back? It's potential to happen, right? We need to wait and see it until everyone's fit exactly how the pattern will go with Arteta. Personally, I think Gabriel's better though. So would you bring in Ismaila Sarr for Ndiaye, yes or no? I'm going to say no, purely because Crystal Palace have got Arsenal away in game week 9. The worst fixture on paper they're going to have all season. And we know Arsenal aren't going to keep 38 clean sheets. Some teams will score against them. Palace are capable of doing that. But it's not a fixture you want to target. So although Bournemouth at home this week is okay, Arsenal away next week isn't. And I understand that people want to sell Ndiaye because he's got Man City away this week, but that's slightly better than playing Arsenal. And then he's got Spurs at home anyway next week. So next 2 fixtures are quite similar, I would say, for Palace and Everton. So I would just favour rolling the transfer because you're not going to get to next week and really wish you had Sarr for Arsenal away. And if you really want to make the move, you can do it in game week 10 when Sarr's got Brentford at home, but you probably won't want to do it because it's Sunderland away for Everton. So Ndiaye actually looks okay after Man City away. So if you've already got him, I think I'd prefer to roll the transfer. So is it viable to go for Gakpo for Liverpool attacking cover? He scored against Chelsea, and I'm thinking ahead to their nice fixtures. He's viable if you're confident in the minutes moving forward. For me, I would be too skeptical about how many he's going to get to buy him. I'd rather just buy a player from a different team. So when I look at the season so far, first 7 game weeks, he's played 5 90 minutes. So game weeks 1 to 4, he played 90 minutes every game. But since the last international break, when Champions League and stuff has started, the minutes have come down a little bit. So he only played 60 against Everton. And then against Crystal Palace in game week 6, he was benched. Now, to be fair, he came on at half-time and Liverpool were much better in the second half. Potentially, that's why he's gone and played 90 against Chelsea in game week 7. But there has been a bit of a dip in his minutes because they're trying to fit in a lot of players. Now, they don't necessarily have another out-and-out left winger they're going to use regularly, but they can bring in someone like Wirtz and play McAllister and Szoboszlai and Conor Bradley at right back and just let Wirtz have a free role. And that might mean at some point Gakpo gets benched again. So I guess the question is, how often do you think he's going to get benched? I don't think it's going to be a lot, but it's probably going to happen. Like over the next 5, let's say 4 to 6 game weeks, Gakpo probably gets benched at least once. What's your reaction going to be when that happens? If you're just going to be super frustrated, just go elsewhere. It's simple as that. If you can put up with the odd benching and you think even if he misses one of the next 4 or 5 games, he's still great value at 7.5, or is he 7.6? Yeah, 7.5, then go for him. It's all about how you're going to react. Personally, as good as the Liverpool fixtures are, unless I'm confident the player is going to play the majority, I'd probably rather look elsewhere. Like, I actually think for the next 4 weeks, you could argue Eze is better at Arsenal. And if Enzo Fernandez was fully fit, I think he's much better than Gakpo. Guaranteed minutes, number 10, on penalties as well, with no Cole Palmer. I just think he would be much better. Game week 10, I'd rather have Sarr from Crystal Palace. So it's always good strategy in FPL. Look at who's got the best fixtures, then look at the viable options. But it doesn't necessarily mean you need any players from that team. Like, you look at Liverpool right now, I bet there's lots of people wildcarding this week with 0 Liverpool players. And I don't particularly hate it. Because if it's one of Salah or Haaland, it's hard to look against Haaland right now, so that discounts him. You could go Isak if you've got spare money, but he's a lot of cash, and I think most people on wildcard would prefer to go for Saka from a minutes perspective. And then defensively, Van Dijk's okay, but most people don't want to buy him right now. So don't force a Liverpool player in just because the fixtures are good. I don't mind Gakpo at 7.5, but I personally, just my playstyle, I prefer to be much more confident in game time. And I just don't think it's quite there for Gakpo. I think early subs are a possibility, and the odd benching here or there is going to happen as well. If you go for Gakpo, you hope those benchings happen in the Champions League, Carabao Cup, etc. But obviously, there's no way to guarantee that. So what should we do with Richarlison? I think he's one of those players that when you've got a spare transfer to deal with him, you should just go ahead and do it. For what it's worth, I actually think he'll probably start against Villa at home. He did go away with Brazil during the international break, but he was on the bench for both games from what I could see, and played less than 20 minutes in both of them. So I don't think there's a huge issue in terms of the minutes he's played over the break. Therefore, he'll probably start in game week 8. But as we've already seen, you can't guarantee starts with him. Like, a lot of people said that he didn't start in game week 4 because it was after the international break, but then he didn't start before it in game week 7 against Leeds. He's just not a player capable of playing weekend, midweek, weekend regularly, so they have to manage his minutes. And so even without Solanke as an option on Moani, he still had his minutes managed. That's a problem because once those players are finally back and available, Richarlison's minutes are going to come right down. So I think he'll start this week, and Villa at home is not a bad fixture, so you could keep him. But if you're sat there with a couple of free transfers and you just want to deal with it, and you want to go to Bowen or João Pedro, I think that's a perfectly reasonable move. And if you don't move him this week, it's going to happen over the next couple. So who would you go for, Saka or Eze? Money is no problem. I would go for Saka purely because I see him as the better long-term option. With Odegaard out for a few weeks, Eze's minutes should be pretty good, and the next 4 fixtures for Arsenal aren't bad. So as a short-term move, I do like Eze, and obviously it saves you some money. But if money's not a problem, you buy the better long-term pick. Like, if you look at Arsenal's fixtures, outside of Chelsea away in game week 13, they're just pretty good from right now up until, I don't know, maybe game week 19. And you know with Saka, no matter who gets back to full fitness, he is first choice in that Arsenal 11. Now, I can't guarantee that at some point, Saka won't get benched. It might be that when Madueke is fully fit, Arteta uses a Premier League game to rest him. It could happen in the Champions League, Carabao Cup, etc. But you know that Saka's only being benched for fitness reasons, not because he thinks Madueke is a better option. Whereas with Eze, he hasn't got a guaranteed place in that 11 when everyone is fit. He may well start quite a few games when that is the case, but Odegaard could play instead of him in one of those central roles, Trossard and Martinelli on the left. So Eze is a really nice 4 to 5 game week move, I think. And if that's all you're looking at, you could go for him. But even in that case, where you're looking short term, I'm taking the penalty taker. So Saka for me, quite easy. So just really quickly on my team, I'm still pretty set on rolling. So my current 11 is Raya in goal and Dubravka on the bench. I think that will stick, especially with the news that Fulham might be without a number 9. Arsenal clean sheet just looks not guaranteed, but a pretty good chance. So Raya in goal over Dubravka, Lacroix, Van Dijk, Gabriel back 3, Reinders, Fernandes, Semenyo, Paquetá is my midfield. Then up front it's Evanilson, Haaland, Gyökeres. I probably am going to play Evanilson ahead of Senesi. Interestingly, before the first game of Game Week 7, I did a quick poll on Twitter. Who would people play, Evanilson or Senesi? Senesi won by a mile. It'd be interesting to see if that would happen again if I put the same poll up. I just don't see I don't see Bournemouth keeping a clean sheet in this game. And obviously Senesi's got DEFCONs, but if I'm pretty confident they don't keep a clean sheet, I'm more willing to back the attacker over the defender, even though I've got Lacroix in defence. So the ideal outcome for me is Evanilson wipes the Lacroix clean sheet and Lacroix wipes the Senesi clean sheet. That's probably not what's going to happen, but that's what I would like to happen. Haaland captain, obviously, and then I'm going to keep Gyökeres. I've only got one transfer anyway, so I couldn't even switch Gyökeres to Saka if I wanted to. I am a little bit tempted to move Evanilson on to João Pedro. I've got the money in the bank. It would be a disaster because I could have just started with João Pedro on wildcard in Game Week 4, and I wish I'd done that. So for the people that straight after our wildcard wanted me to admit to a mistake, it's looking right now like a bit of a mistake not to have just gone João Pedro because he does look better than Evanilson for the next couple. And maybe I did make too much of a short-term move. I just thought that Bournemouth's fixtures straight after Game Week 4 were a little bit better than Chelsea. And maybe the money in the bank would come in handy because I had the money to get João Pedro on wildcard. It hasn't worked out. Evanilson's basically done nothing. I've not needed the money either. It's still sat there. But I don't know whether to get João Pedro. The thing that's playing on my mind is if Enzo is out, then João Pedro on penalties for Forest away, followed by Sunderland at home. Now, he wouldn't have penalties for Sunderland because Enzo would probably be back, and Enzo will probably start against Forest anyway. I don't know if it's enough. Like, the problem is, I know I need to roll transfers soon because there is going to be more interesting things I need to do later on, especially with the fixture swings for Liverpool, Man City, Newcastle, etc. So I need to roll transfers soon. But it's also... part of me thinks just use the transfer now. You can just roll in Game Week 9. But then you fall into that pattern of just constantly using your moves. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not like I'm taking a hit. It's just, am I so sure that João Pedro is the one? Because ultimately, next week, Evanilson's kind of okay. He plays Forest at home. It's not as good as Sunderland at home. But it ain't bad either, especially if Ange Postecoglou's still in charge. So I think I roll. Basically, just to ramble on a bit here, you can probably just switch off if you want to, especially if you watched the team selection the other day. I think in Game Week 9, the team looks fine. And in Game Week 10, the team also looks mostly fine. There's not a huge amount of issues. I could even play a back 4 if I needed to. When I get to Game Week 11, that's the point where I got a decision to make about Reinders because he's got Liverpool at home in Game Week 11 and Newcastle away in 12. The fixtures are good afterwards. Is he still playing regularly? Is he still getting good chances, etc.? If he's not, maybe he's a sell. If Havertz is back, maybe Gyökeres becomes a sell. Maybe I really need to get Saka. Bruno Fernandes, maybe I want to just change him to someone else. My defence I'm kind of happy with, but I've also got a lot of money tied up in it. So if I need more money in my attack, I've got to also sell a defender. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, later on there's going to be some big decisions to be made. Like Paquetá, once you get past Game Week 11, is probably someone I'm going to want to sell. So when I get to Game Weeks 10, 11, 12, I might have 3, 4, 5 players I want to deal with. And I'm not going to want to take hits. So I guess what I'm doing is prioritizing that the transfers will be more useful later on than just doing Evanilson to João Pedro this week. I do sometimes think I get stuck too much with long-term thinking. I don't take the points that are on offer right now. And obviously, if João Pedro smashes it this week and Evanilson blanks again, that's not going to look great when João Pedro's got Sunderland next week. And I'm not going to want to make the move next week. because Evan Nielsen's got Forest at home, and I'm more than happy to play him in that. So yeah, I don't know. There's part of me that thinks there's not actually that much to do right now. Palmer's out, so the only player for me to get at that kind of price is Saka, which I need to sell Yorkeresh for. If Yorkeresh keeps playing, he's okay. So in one hand, there's not much to do, so I can use the transfer now. But on the other hand, there might be a lot of stuff to do later on. So again, I'm rambling a bit here. I'm going to roll because I'm favouring moves later on, probably. By the deadline tomorrow, I might own João Pedro, but that's about the only move I'm looking at. I can't get Enzo Fernandez now unless we see him in training. And even then, I'd have to sell Semenyo or Fernandez. Not going to happen. Not going to take a hit. So yeah, I'm rolling. Thanks for watching. Give it a like. Hit that subscribe button. Check out Fantasy Football Hub before the 50% offer ends on the Game Week 8 deadline. Links in the description below. And I'll catch you at 9 AM UK time, Saturday morning for the deadline stream for Game Week 8. I'll see you then.